On their 6th wedding anniversary, Pei Ching-chen kicked me down a long flight of stairs for the sake of Nailan Yang, who had just suffered a miscarriage. Su Qinghuan, if anything happens to Yang, I'll make you pay with your life. Lying in a pool of blood, I didn't cry or make a scene. I simply vanished into the torrential rain, leaving behind a blood-soaked divorce agreement. The next day, the police knocked on the Pei family's door with just one sentence. Pei Ching-chen went insane. Su Qinghuan, you venomous woman. Pei Ching-chen's roar echoed through the empty villa, carrying a violence I had never heard before. His expensive suit was already wrinkled, and his face, usually cold and noble, was twisted into a near-monstrous grimace. He shoved me aside like a piece of trash with terrifying strength. I didn't even have time to steady myself. My foot slipped and I tumbled backward uncontrollably. My body slammed against the hard European-style stairs. A sharp pain shot from my spine to my brain. Accompanied by a dull thud, I felt a warm liquid trickling down my forehead, blurring my vision. I looked up to see Pei Ching-chen tightly clutching a sobbing, tearful Nailan Yang. Ching-chen, it doesn't hurt really. Sister Qinghwan didn't mean it. She's just too in love with you. Nailan Yang huddled in his arms. While her mouth pleaded for mercy, her eyes, adorned with expensive eyeshadow, glanced contemptuously at me over his shoulder. There wasn't a hint of pain in that look, only provocation. Pei Ching-chen's chest heaved. He carefully set Nailan Yang down on a nearby daybed and whirled around, his cold eyes brimming with hatred. Su Qinghuan, I must have been blind to marry you. Yang was carrying my child. If something happens to her, I'll make sure you go to the grave with her. Go to the grave. Those words stabbed into my heart like ice-cold blades. For 6 years, I had poured my heart and soul into supporting the Pei group, enduring the ridicule of his entire family, only to be told I should go to the grave. I struggled against the handrail, crawling up from the cold wooden steps inch by inch. Drops of blood fell onto the white carpet, a startling sight. I looked up at this man I had loved for 6 years, the man who had drained me of everything. Pei Ching-chen, are you certain she fell on her own, and that it has anything to do with me? My voice was eerily calm, so calm it felt foreign even to me. You still dare to make excuses? Pei Ching-chen lunged forward, grabbing me by the throat and slamming me against the wall. The doctor said Yang is hemorrhaging. If you hadn't pushed her, how could it be this serious? You're just jealous. A wicked woman like you doesn't deserve to be Mrs. Pei. His fingers were icy, his grip strong enough to crush my windpipe. I looked through the gaps of his fingers at Nailan Yang. She was dabbing at non-existent tears with a tissue, the corners of her mouth curving into a victor's smile. They were putting on a show together. Nailan Yang's pregnancy was fake, and so was the miscarriage. Even the so-called hemorrhage was nothing more than a ruse coordinated with a private doctor. Pei Ching-chen, so this is your true love? I didn't struggle or scream, I simply stared him down. Pei Ching-chen, you will regret this. Regret? My only regret is marrying you. He flung me aside as if he had touched something filthy. Without a second glance, he turned back to Nailan Yang, becoming as gentle as if the monster from a moment ago had never existed. Yang, don't be afraid, I'm here. I leaned against the wall, limping toward the door. With every step, the agonizing pain in my back made my vision go dark. But I didn't look back. I knew that once I crossed that threshold, I would never return. The vanishing act. That night, thunder and lightning raged outside. The booming thunder sounded like a death knell for my absurd 6-year marriage. I took out my phone and dialed my private assistant. Clear all traces. From today on, the name Su Qinghuan disappears completely. After hanging up, I walked to the fountain. Outside the villa, my car was parked there, its engine humming coldly in the rain. I took off the diamond ring that symbolized my status as Mrs. Pei and tossed it into the depths of the fountain. Goodbye, Pei Ching-chen. I started the car and floored the accelerator in the rearview mirror. The lights of the Pei villa faded until they were swallowed by the darkness. At that moment, I wasn't heartbroken. I felt an unprecedented sense of liberation. Pei Ching-chen, since you love acting so much, I've prepared a much bigger show for you. Don't you want Nailan Yang to take my place? Don't you think I'm just a parasite clinging to you? I'll make you realize that without me, your Pei group won't last 3 days. My knuckles turned white from gripping the steering wheel. Since you want me to pay with my life, I'll exit with a death. As for what happens next, you'd better pray you can handle it. The car sped off the private road and merged into the highway. The GPS showed the destination as the airport, where a private jet was already waiting. I glanced through the window at the Pei house, swaying in the storm. 6 years of youth and effort. I'd consider it a donation to the dogs from now on. I was no longer the submissive Mrs. Pei, I was the heir to Universal Capital. A risk assessment expert with the power of life and death in the business world. Pei Ching-chen, your hell has just begun. At 1:00 a.m. a speeding sports car suddenly lost control at the guardrail of a mountain road. The piercing screech of failing brakes echoed through the valley, followed by a massive impact. Flames instantly lit up half the night sky. I watched the car tumble into the abyss, my heartbeat remarkably steady. A distance away, my phone screen lit up with a message from Pei Ching-chen. Su Qinghuan, be at the Civil Affairs Bureau at 8:00 a.m. tomorrow. I've drafted the divorce papers. Don't force me to use measures to kick you out. I looked at the message, curled my lips into a smile and blocked his number with a tap. See you tomorrow, CEO Pei. I whispered to the deep night outside. I turned and walked toward the plane parked at the end of the tarmac. In this game, the roles of hunter and prey had officially flipped. Now I just had to wait for dawn. I would make sure everyone in the city knew that what Pei Ching-chen discarded wasn't a parasite, but the very foundation of his entire commercial empire. The aftermath. At 4:00 a.m., the air in the master bedroom of the Pei villa was as stagnant as if it were soaked in glue. Pei Ching-chen frowned, staring intently at the divorce agreement. The printed terms were cold and heartless. It wasn't signed yet, but my wedding ring, worth tens of millions, was wrapped in a tissue and pressed neatly against the bottom left corner. That ring wasn't just jewelry, it was a family heirloom from the Pei ancestral home, given to me when I married him 6 years ago. Now it sat there like a cold death warrant. Nalan Yang was still feigning sleep in the guest room. Pei Ching-chen got up, preparing to go to the study to handle a critical overseas listing document. Just then the doorbell rang frantically. Who is it? Pei Ching-chen walked downstairs, his face full of irritation. He opened the door to find several uniformed police officers standing on the steps, looking solemn and holding official envelopes. The lead officer looked at him coldly. Mr. Pei Ching-chen, we've received a report that your wife, Su Qinghuan, was involved in a severe car accident on the southern mountain road last night. The vehicle plunged into a deep valley and caught fire. Pei Ching-chen froze for a second, then scoffed with a hint of impatience. This again, to threaten me into not divorcing. She'd even play out a scene where she curses herself to death. Tell her whether she's dead or alive, this divorce is happening. The officer ignored his sarcasm and pulled a photo from the envelope, the wreckage of the accident and a blurred, charred fragment of a bank card. Mr. Pei, due to the severity of the explosion, the body is currently carbonized. However, based on the personal items and license plate info collected at the scene, the deceased has been tentatively identified as Ms. Su Qinghuan. As the officer spoke, a death confirmation form was handed to him. We need you to come identify the remains and perform a DNA match as soon as possible. Pei Ching-chen's smirk froze. His pupils contracted sharply and the paper felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. What did you say? His voice was dry. Additionally, here is a lawyer's letter from Universal Capital. Another officer opened a file. Ms. Su Qinghuan signed a full power of attorney agreement before her passing. Since Ms. Su has now lost civil capacity, Universal Capital is immediately initiating liquidation. They are withdrawing all investments from the Pei Group and demanding repayment of all previous loans within 24 hours, totaling 3.8 billion. 3.8 billion. Pei Ching-chen's hand shook. Most of the Pei Group's cash flow was currently tied up in the upcoming listing project. If they were forced to repay that much money with interest, in 24 hours the Pei Group would completely collapse. That's impossible. Pei Ching-chen grabbed the officer's collar, his eyes bloodshot, his arrogant CEO persona vanished, replaced by sheer panic. You've been tricked, she's just a housewife who knows nothing. Where would she get 3.8 billion? What Universal Capital? This is a trap she set to get back at me. Mr. Pei, please compose yourself, the officer said, coldly brushing his hand away. This is the corporate certification from Universal Capital with seals verified by international financial regulators. Legally speaking, Ms. Su Qinghuan was the actual controller of Universal Capital. Nalan Yang stood at the top of the stairs in her nightgown, her face pale. She had heard the 3.8 billion and the withdrawal of investment. Pei Ching-chen stumbled back, knocking over a vase in the foyer. Shards flew everywhere, mirroring his shattered life. His mind was filled with the terrifyingly calm look in my eyes when I left, and that final sentence, "You will regret this." Was he regretting it now? No, he just felt the world spinning. Call her out, I want to see her, this isn't real. Pei Ching-chen rushed to the garage like a madman. He wanted to drag me out of this dead end, even if it meant confirming a corpse with his own eyes. However, when he drove frantically to the scene of the accident, he was greeted only by yellow police tape and a bottomless, smoke-filled abyss. The rain had stopped and the air smelled of scorched iron. He stumbled to the guardrail and looked down. Aside from the blackened earth, there was nothing. Su Qinghuan, he screamed at the top of his lungs. His voice echoed through the valley, but there was no reply. A few kilometers away at a highway toll booth, an unremarkable black sedan drove slowly through. I sat in the back seat, quietly closing my tablet. On the screen was the graph of the Pei Group's stock, which had plummeted vertically in the minute before the market opened. The assistant beside me respectfully handed me a cup of hot tea. President Su Pei Ching-chen should have received his first gift by now. According to the original plan, should we launch the media campaign? I looked at the sky turning white outside the window, a faint smile playing on my lips. Start it. Tell the media that the late Mrs. Pei suffered long-term abuse, and that there are major loopholes in the company's finances. Understood. Pei Ching-chen, if you want a divorce, I'm happy to oblige, but if you want me to go down with you, then let's see who ends up burying whom. This is merely the opening act. The real torment has only just begun. I closed my eyes and breathed in the air of freedom. For the first time in 6 years, the world felt vast, and Pei Ching-chen was destined to become nothing more than a speck of dust within it. Dawn broke, and with it, the end of the Pei Group arrived. The VIP corridor of the city private hospital was eerily quiet. Like a cornered beast, Pei Ching-chen slammed open the door to the intensive care unit he had come to collect Nailin Yang for her discharge, only to run into Dr. Wang, the attending physician, stepping out of the director's office. "Doctor, how is she really doing?" Pei Ching-chen's voice was agonizingly hoarse, his eyes webbed with broken red capillaries. Dr. Wang adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses, looking awkward as he avoided Pei Ching-chen's piercing stare. "Mr. Pei, regarding Miss Naylin's miscarriage report, we've re-verified it. Given the emergency at the time, the previous diagnosis was, get to the point, Pei." Ching-chen grabbed him by the collar, his grip so violent the doctor nearly lost his footing. "The records show Miss Naylin was never pregnant." Dr. Wang exhaled, his voice trembling. "She ingested a massive amount of emetics and contraceptives, which triggered severe acute gastric bleeding and endocrine failure. The so-called hemorrhaging was entirely self-induced." Pei Ching-chen's hand slowly went limp. He stood frozen, as if the very soul had been sucked out of him. A crushing pain radiated from his chest. A shock even greater than hearing the police report of my death the night before. No pregnancy, no miscarriage. So, when he had violently shoved me down the stairs yesterday, Nailin Yang's supposed loss was nothing but the start of a massive fraud. He hadn't just been a pawn in her game, he had personally pushed the woman who had sacrificed everything for him for 6 years into an abyss of despair. "Ching-chen," a frail voice called out from the room. Nailin Yang, clad in a hospital gown and looking deathly pale, turned her tear-filled, hypocritical eyes toward him. "Ching-chen, don't listen to them. I was just in so much pain. I really was carrying your child. Maybe the impact just made it disappear." She was still spinning tales. Even with the lie laid bare, she tried to use that pathetic, fragile act to numb his senses. In the past, Pei Ching-chen fell for it every time, but now, as flashes of me lying on the stairs, blood trickling from my forehead, replayed in his mind, the woman before him felt utterly repulsive. "Shut up." Pei Ching-chen turned, his dark, predatory eyes locking onto her. He strode over and ripped the foreline from her hand. "Ah!" Nailin Yang shrieked in terror. "Ching-chen, what are you doing? I'm asking you one last time," Pei Ching-chen said, his voice terrifyingly calm, laced with a lethal chill. "At the top of those stairs, did Qinghuan really push you?" Nailin Yang's eyes instantly reddened as tears spilled over. "Don't you believe me? Does our years of history mean less than that woman who never shared your heart?" Watching her refuse to repent, Pei Ching-chen suddenly remembered a file left at the Pei Group's reception by a Universal Capital lawyer earlier that morning. It was a meticulous record of every cent Nailin Yang had embezzled from the company over the last 3 years, including transfers to various other men. Initially, he thought Su Qinghuan had forged the evidence out of spite. Now, he didn't dare doubt a single word. "Enough." Pei Ching-chen slammed his hand onto the nightstand so hard the vase shattered instantly. "You don't love me, you're just using me. You were never pregnant, you just wanted to force Su Qinghuan out so you could get your hands on the Pei family assets." Nailin Yang spiraled into a total panic. She had never seen Pei Qingchen this enraged. He looked ready to tear her apart. Qingchen, calm down. That's Su Qinghuan we're talking about. She's a malicious woman. Besides, isn't she dead now? She is dead. Pei Qingchen interrupted, a self-deprecating, cold smirk tugging at his lips. It was a bleak, absurd smile. She's truly dead, killed by you and driven to it by my own hands. He turned and walked out without a second glance at the ashen-faced Nailin Yang. He stumbled out of the hospital, the sunlight blinding him. With trembling fingers, he pulled up the divorce papers I had left behind. The agreement was already in effect. The lawyers had finalized the asset liquidation. Even his last unblocked black card now showed a limit of 0. A notification popped up, an unread email. It was a formal notice from Universal Capital to the Pei Group Board of Directors. By the late MS Su Qinghuan's directive, effective immediately, all of Mr. Pei Qingchen's authority within the company is suspended. A team dispatched by Universal Capital will take over full financial auditing of the Pei Group. At the end of the notice was a photo of me at a private helipad from the night before. In the photo, I had traded my domestic linen dress for a sharply tailored black trench coat, wearing dark sunglasses and with my back to the camera. My silhouette was cold and imposing. This wasn't the submissive wife he remembered. This was a stranger, a true titan of capital. Standing at the hospital gates, a wave of unprecedented fear washed over him. It turned out that his proudest 6 years were built entirely on a lie. He thought he was the high and mighty ruler of his world when in reality he was just a chess piece I moved at my whim. Su Qinghuan, he whispered to the empty street, his voice as shattered as his world. It had been less than 6 hours since he learned of my death. In that time, he had lost the illusion of his goddess and the business empire he relied on for survival. As his mind began to fracture, a Rolls-Royce slowed to a crawl across the street. The window rolled down, revealing a familiar, cold face. It was me, or rather, it was my silhouette, glowing so brightly in the sun that it was hard to look at. I sat in the back seat, not even deigning to give him a sideways glance. I simply gave a casual instruction to my assistant: leak the Pei Group's floor price for next quarter's biggest bid to their competitors. Since Mr. Pei loves to play games so much, let's make sure he loses everything. The car glided past him, leaving a cold draft in its wake. Pei Qingchen froze. He tried to chase after it, but was immediately blocked by Universal's undercover security detail. Mr. Pei, President Su is very busy. She doesn't have time for trivialities, the assistant said coldly, tossing a subpoena at his feet. This is a preliminary investigation filing regarding your violent assault and financial fraud. Better get your lawyers ready. Pei Qingchen looked at the thin stack of papers detailing his crimes. He finally understood. From the moment he laid a hand on me, the ending was written in stone. I had already reached heights he could never touch, quietly watching as he spiraled into the abyss he dug for himself. The 59th floor of the Universal Capital headquarters in the heart of the financial district was as cold as ice. The executives of the Pei Group couldn't even dream of setting foot on this floor. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city's neon lights stretched out below. The Pei building, once a proud landmark of the CBD, was now just a tiny pawn waiting to be cleared from my board. I sat in a handcrafted leather chair, tapping my fingers on the desk. Before me were years of the Pei Group's financial statements, each page documenting how Pei Qingchen fabricated profits and embezzled funds to maintain his hollow CEO persona. President Su, the Pei Group's emergency shareholder meeting starts in 10 minutes. My special assistant Lin Shun stood by and handed me the latest equity transfer agreement. The moment you show up, 2/3 of the shareholders will defect. They're all waiting for the rumored dead Mrs. Pei to appear as the head of Universal. I took the pen without a word, staring coldly at my reflection in the glass. For the first time in 6 years, I had discarded the aprons and the bare face of Mrs. Pei. I wore a sharp, custom-tailored black suit that traced a powerful silhouette. I used a cold-toned lipstick to redefine the face Pei Qingchen had once insulted at will. My eyes were filled with a frozen, lethal intent. Pei Qingchen always thought I couldn't survive without him, I said, standing up and pushing open the heavy office doors. He actually believed that without his protection, Su Qinghuan wouldn't even know how to live. The elevator doors at the end of the hall slid open. I left the Universal building and stepped straight into the car headed for the Pei Group. Half an hour later, the atmosphere in the Pei Group's boardroom was suffocating. Pei Qingchen sat at the head of the table, his face gray and the dark circles under his eyes impossible to hide. He was being besieged by a mob of furious shareholders, all demanding to know why he had provoked a financial titan like Universal Capital and why the stock had hit its downward limit in a single day. Mr. Pay if your personal moral failings have damaged this company, resign immediately. A senior shareholder slammed a report onto the table. Universal Capital's lawyers are already here. They're demanding full repayment of all loans within 3 hours, or they'll trigger a direct liquidation. Impossible. Su Qinghuan and I are married. Her money is my money. Why would Universal? Mr. Pei, don't speak too soon. The boardroom doors were thrown open with a heavy thud. The moment I stepped inside, the room fell into a deathly silence. The once raucous shareholders stood up instinctively. Their eyes filled with shock and awe, and Pei Qingchen, as if he had seen a ghost, bolted upright from his chair, his eyes wide with terror. Qu Qinghua, you're alive. He trembled, his voice sharp and strained, as if someone were squeezing his throat. I walked toward him, the rhythmic click of my high heels echoing as I approached. I looked down at the man who used to boss me around with such arrogance. Ignoring his shock, I took the seat directly next to the head of the table and slammed the equity transfer agreement onto the center of the conference desk with a sharp thwack. Shareholders, my name is Su Qinghua, and I am the actual controlling stakeholder of Universe Capital. My gaze swept across the room, my voice cold and crystal clear. During our marriage, Pei Qingchen long exploited our relationship to embezzle funds from Universe and engaged in severe operational misconduct. Today, representing Universe, I am exercising my shareholder rights to propose the immediate removal of Pei Qingchen as president of the Pei Group. You dare fire me, I'm your husband. Pei Qingchen rushed forward like a madman, reaching for my shoulders, only to be instantly tackled and pinned to the table by the 2 security guards behind me. He struggled, his once invincible CEO dignity now ground into the dirt. Su Qinghua, this was premeditated. You got close to me just for this day. 6 years of being a virtuous wife was all an act. I leaned down and whispered in his ear, Pei Qingchen, for those 6 years I wasn't just your maid, I was your investor. Everything you have was given to you by me. Now I'm simply taking back what belongs to me. It's called returning property to its rightful owner. All in favor of the removal. I looked at the seated shareholders. Sign here. There wasn't a moment's hesitation. The sound of pens scratching against paper became the final funeral dirge for Pei Qingchen's career. As security dragged him toward the exit, he began to laugh hysterically, tears of resentment streaming down his face. You think you've won. The Pei family still has connections in the business world. Those projects won't run without me. Su Qinghua, you'll regret this. Without me, you are nothing. I didn't even bother to look back. I simply took the tablet from my assistant and watched the Pei Group's stock price utterly collapse in real time. Get him out of here, I said flatly. From today on, the Pei Group's name is Su. A round of applause broke out in the conference room. Standing by the window, I watched Pei Qingchen being dumped onto the rain-slicked curb by security. His pathetic state was a perfect reflection of the cold indifference he showed me the day he pushed me down the stairs. President Su, regarding N.A. Lanyang, my assistant whispered a reminder, let her keep living in her dream world for now. I turned around, my eyes sharp as blades. Since she loves playing the miscarriage drama so much, let her stay in that hospital and experience exactly what it feels like to be utterly ruined. For the first time, I felt truly in control. Pei Qingchen, this is just the beginning. You still owe me a life, and we haven't even started settling that debt. The Starry Night Charity Gala in Shenzhen has always been a coliseum for the business elite. Amidst the rustle of silk and shadows of power, every glimmer of a cufflink hides stakes worth hundreds of millions. 5 days ago, I was a shadow behind Pei Qingchen, even needing his approval to pick out a dress. 5 days later, I stepped through the doors of the Starry Hotel in a minimalist deep blue velvet gown, every step commanding the spotlight. My date was Cheng Yang, the COO of Universe Capital. He followed discreetly, whispering, President Su, Pei Qingchen is here tonight. Even though the Pei Group has collapsed, he liquidated all his real estate and scraped together 30 million from the black market. He's looking to flip his fortunes by snagging the development rights for the South City district tonight. I let out a soft laugh and took a glass of champagne from a waiter's tray. Scanning the center of the ballroom in a corner, a humbled Pei Qingchen was busy toasting former partners. His designer suit was expensive, but the collar was slightly frayed. The arrogance in his eyes had vanished. replaced by the desperate frenzy of a man with one last card to play. He hadn't even noticed me yet, still rambling about fake profit margins. If I can just get this plot of land, I can, he pleaded with a real estate tycoon. Mr. Pei. I walked over slowly, my voice cool and composed, instantly drawing every eye in the vicinity. Pei Qingchen spun around the moment he saw me. His glass hit the floor with a shattering crash, the color drained from his face, and he froze as if his soul had been snatched away. How are you here? His voice shook, showing more terror than anger. It's a charity gala, anyone can attend. Why, Mr. Pei, do you have a guilty conscience? I set my glass down and tilted my head slightly toward the executives who had been humoring him. Gentlemen, Mr. Pei Qingchen's embezzlement case involving Universe Capital is already in legal proceedings. I imagine none of you would want to do business with a potential financial fraudster. The guests instantly recoiled. The developers who were just discussing a partnership scrambled to distance themselves, not even daring to look him in the eye. Pei Qingchen's face turned a deep, angry purple. He lunged forward. Su Qinghua, do you have to be this ruthless? I have no money left. They took the house. What more do you want? What do I want? I took a step forward, my presence completely overwhelming him. I lowered my voice to an icy whisper. When you pushed me down those stairs for Na Lanyang, did you think about what would happen to me? I am only taking back what is mine. As for your current state, you brought this on yourself. Shut up, you bitch. Driven by shame and rage, he actually tried to swing at me before his fist could even drop. My security team had efficiently pinned his arms behind his back, slamming him against a decorative pillar. The ballroom music cut out abruptly, and everyone's attention converged on us. Security, throw him out, I said coldly without a second glance. A man like this doesn't deserve to be here. As Pei Qingchen was dragged away like trash, he screamed curses. I adjusted my gown, picked up a fresh glass of champagne and smiled at the stunned onlookers. My apologies for the scene, everyone. Just then, the auctioneer's voice rang out from the stage. Next up is tonight's highlight, the exclusive development rights for the South City District. Starting bid 20 million. This was what Pei Qingchen was banking on. He thought this would be his comeback in his dreams. 21 million. A small-time business owner bid tentatively. 50 million. I called out nonchalantly, raising my paddle. The room gasped. 50 million was a massive overpayment for such a small plot. Pei Qingchen, still struggling at the entrance, heard my voice and broke free, rushing back in with tears of rage. That's mine, that's my only chance. I didn't even turn my head. I kept my eyes on the stage, a cold smirk playing on my lips. 100 million. Dead silence. No one dared to bid against me. The auctioneer's gavel trembled. Going once, going twice, sold. I slowly turned to face Pei Qingchen, who had collapsed onto the floor by the door. I walked over, knelt in front of him and used my hand, adorned with an expensive diamond ring, to lightly pat his cheek. Pei Qingchen, you're broke, and not just broke, you're buried in debt. I stood up and walked gracefully toward the exit, tossing one last line over my shoulder. I'm not even going to develop that land. I bought it specifically so you can never ever get back on your feet. Outside the hotel, the Shenzhen night breeze was cool. Cheng Yang opened the car door for me from the back seat. I watched the pathetic sight of Pei Qingchen being forcibly removed from the premises. My phone vibrated. It was a threatening text from Na Lanyang. Su Qinghua, don't get cocky. I have dirt on you if I don't survive this. I'm taking you down with me. I snorted and replied directly. Then let's see who dies first. As the car pulled away, Pei Qingchen's screams faded into the distance. I knew this revenge game had only just reached its most exciting level. He thought I just wanted to destroy his career. No, I wanted him to watch as everything he ever craved was ground into dust by my own hands. The Pei family estate, a mansion symbolizing 6 generations of wealth, now looked hollowed out. The expensive topiaries in the courtyard were overgrown, their yellowed leaves swirling in the wind. The gates were locked, and only an old brass lamp flickered dimly in the yard. I knew that Pei's mother, the socialite who used to mock me as a useless housewife at every party, was hiding inside. I entered the estate without even alerting the guards. I was the one who had paid for this house. I had personally overseen every renovation and every expensive collectible. Who is it who gave you permission to come in? The shrill voice of Pei's mother came from the second-floor balcony. She was in a bathrobe, wearing a cheap hydrating face mask. The moment she saw me, her wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Su Qinghua. She rubbed her eyes in disbelief. her refined but sharp face twisting into its usual look of arrogance. "You jinx, I heard you died in a car crash. What are you doing here, trying to haunt me?" I ignored her insults and walked to the long mahogany table, taking the seat at the head. "I'm here to repossess the house, Mother." I pulled a notice of property recovery and liquidation from my bag and slid it toward her. "The title to this estate has always been in my name. Pei Qingchen was merely a guest. Now I'm taking it back, in your dreams." She lunged at me like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, sweeping the document off the table. "You married into the Pei family, so this is Pei ancestral property. You're just a woman my son got bored with. You have no right to take my house." "Got bored with me?" I chuckled coldly. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of photos, evidence of Na Lanyang meeting other men, embezzling funds, and even recordings of her and Pei's mother plotting to kick me out. I placed a voice recorder on the table and pressed play. Na Lanyang's fragile yet venomous voice filled the room. "Godmother, once Su Qinghua signs the papers and we sell the estate, we'll split that 10 million. It'll be enough for you to retire abroad. As for Qingchen, he's just an ATM. Once the company fails, I'll take him overseas. It's better than staying here with that old hag." Pei's mother turned from pale to ashen. She never imagined that her favorite daughter-in-law had been scheming for her retirement fund all along. "That slut, that trash." Shaking with rage, she pointed at the recorder. "She dared to lie to me." "No, she didn't lie to you." I stood up and walked toward her with predatory grace, my voice as cold as frost. "What lied to you was your mutual greed, Mother Pei. Remember when you splashed a glass of red wine in my face in public just because I didn't buy you that limited edition necklace?" Pei's mother froze, her eyes darting away in guilt. "Back then, you said I was just a useless parasite living off Pei Qingchen." I leaned down, staring into her terror-stricken face. "So now, if that useless parasite possesses the power to make you homeless in an instant, what does that make you?" A gurgling sound escaped her throat as the reality of her situation finally set in. Pei Qingchen had fallen. Without the protection of the Pei group, they were absolutely nothing in this social circle. What do you want?" Her voice finally softened, tinged with a plea. "Pack all your personal belongings and vacate the premises by 3:00 p.m. tomorrow." I looked out at the lush green courtyard. "I'm not selling this house. I plan to turn it into a stray animal shelter. I feel that's the only purpose fitting for the current prestige of the Pei family." You're going too far. Compared to the humiliation you heaped upon me, this is just the interest on the debt." I turned away and waved to the bodyguards outside. "Clear the scene, be gentle, don't scuff my floors." The guards filed in and began briskly removing her personal items. She collapsed onto the floor, wailing in despair as she watched her beloved expensive collections being shoved into cheap woven sacks. Just then the front door was kicked open again. Pei Qingchen burst in, drenched in rainwater. He had clearly just rushed back from outside, hearing from the servants that I was here. He had run in like a madman. He froze at the sight of me sitting there, his gaze shifting from the piles of packed luggage to his shivering mother. "Su Qinghua, how much longer are you going to keep up this act?" He lunged toward me, trying to shove me, but was firmly blocked by the bodyguards. "An act?" I looked up, my eyes as calm as a stagnant pool. "Pei Qingchen, don't you get it yet? I'm the one calling the shots in this play now." I pulled out the final document, a summary of every personal debt under Pei Qingchen's name. "This is the audit report regarding your embezzlement of Universe Capital's funds. It will be delivered to the prosecutor's office tomorrow morning. From this moment on, you haven't just lost the company, not even a single tile of this ancestral home belongs to you." Pei Qingchen stared blankly at the document. In that instant, the last spark of light in his eyes vanished. Looking at his disheveled mother and the room full of liquidation staff, he suddenly dropped to his knees. "Qinghua, I was wrong. Help me please. I can't go to prison. I can't lose everything." His former pride and arrogance vanished in an instant. Looking down at the man kneeling before me, I felt no ripples of emotion. I even found it slightly absurd. I had once placed such high hopes on him to lead a family, but now it was clear the man I chose was nothing more than a pile of mud. Too late. I dropped those two words coldly and walked past him. "If I see you still here at 3:00 p.m. tomorrow, I'll let the law do the talking." As I stepped out of the estate's gates, the setting sun hit my shoulders. Behind me, I heard the shrill cries of Pei's mother and the desperate roars of Pei Qingchen. But I didn't look back. The place I once thought was a home was nothing more than a beautifully packaged cage. Now that the cage had collapsed, I was finally truly free, but this wasn't enough. Na Lanyang, the woman in the hospital who still thought she could flip the script, was the one who started all of this. It was time I paid her a visit. The Cloud's End Club, Shenzhen's top-tier lounge, was awash in neon lights that masked countless filthy secrets. Na Lanyang hadn't collapsed completely like Pei Qingchen. She had heard the rumors in the hospital. She knew the Pei group had changed hands and that the estate she viewed as her own had been repossessed. Now, like a cornered viper, she was determined to bite me one last time before she went down. Accompanied by Cheng Yang, I pushed open the door to the second-floor VIP suite. Na Lanyang was dressed in a priceless gown, swirling a wine glass. Her former fragility was gone, replaced by pure mania. Seated around her were several big shots who had business ties with Pei Qingchen and were now waiting to kick him while he was down. Su Qinghua, you finally showed up. Na Lanyang saw me and flashed a sinister smile. I spent a fortune hiring these helpers just to lure you out. The atmosphere in the room turned hostile instantly. The men looked at me with predatory greed. They had clearly taken her money to give me a lesson. You want to ruin my reputation here. I stood at the door watching this amateurish farce. Na Lanyang, your tactics are still so low rent. Low rent if you walk out of here tonight with your clothes torn, or if some compromising photos are taken. Do you think the shareholders will still follow their capital queen? Na Lanyang sneered and pulled a voice recorder from her bag. Furthermore, I have forged evidence of Universe Capital's illegal operations during its early days. One leak to the media and you're ruined. She thought she held my life in her hands, believing I was still the Su Qinghua from 6 years ago who would cave to such threats. I walked slowly into the room. Under her shocked gaze, I gracefully pulled out the chair opposite her and sat down. Give me the recorder, I said, holding out my hand. She hadn't expected me to be so direct and instinctively pulled her hand back. You think you're still that obedient Mrs. Pei Su Qinghua, you. Before she could finish, Cheng Yang moved in with 2 security guards. Before the men could react, the guards pinned her shoulders. What are you doing? This is Cloud's End. There are rules here, she shrieked, struggling. But the recorder was instantly snatched by Cheng Yang. I didn't destroy it. Instead, I signaled Cheng Yang to turn on the high-definition projector on the wall. You want to see evidence? I'll oblige you. I took a USB drive from my bag and plugged it in. The moment the screen lit up, the room went dead silent. It wasn't dirt on me. It was a complete video record of Na Lanyang over the last 3 years, seducing various business moguls in different clubs to help them steal Pei Group's trade secrets. It even included every chat log of her instructing doctors to forge miscarriage papers and hiring internet trolls to smear me. Na Lanyang's face turned whiter than a sheet of paper. What is this? This isn't real, it's a fake, she screamed, lunging to turn off the projector. The gentlemen in this room know better than anyone if it's real. I glanced at the men who were about to move against me. The deposits she paid you were likely embezzled from the Pei Group, weren't they? If you want to be dragged into a massive fraud case, feel free to keep sitting there. The men, who had looked so smug moments ago, were now breaking into cold sweats as they saw internal trade secrets involving their own companies on the screen. Seconds later, without a word, they scrambled out of the room. Only I, Na Lanyang, and a hidden Pei Qingchen were left. That's right, Pei Qingchen was in the adjoining suite. He thought I didn't know, but I could hear his heavy, ragged breathing through the wall. Look, Na Lanyang. I walked over and pulled up a real-time news alert on my phone. The bulletin regarding the Pei Group's major occupational embezzlement case has been released. The next names on the list, besides yours, are those bosses who just tried to help you. Na Lanyang slumped to the floor, her eyes hollow. The beauty and schemes she had always been so proud of were as fragile as paper before me. You ruined me, you ruined everything, she muttered. You ruined yourself. I signaled toward the door and the police who had been waiting stepped in. Officers, Ms. Na Lanyang is a suspect in multiple counts of commercial fraud and forgery of medical documents. Please take her away. The second before she was hauled out, she screamed toward the door. Qingchen, Pei Qingchen, save me, you said. You loved me, save me. The suite door pushed open, and a haggard Pei Qingchen stood there. He looked at Na Lanyang with no trace of his former affection, only utter coldness and disgust. He had heard the whole truth. He knew she had played him from the start, and that everything he had done was just building someone else's throne. Take her away, he said wearily, turning his back on her without a second glance. Na Lanyang's piercing screams echoed down the hallway until they were cut off by the elevator doors I looked at Pei Qingchen standing alone under the lights, looking more pathetic than a beggar. He looked at me, his lips trembling as if he wanted to speak, but no words came out. Tomorrow I officially take over all remaining assets of the Pei Group. I walked up to him and looked him in the eye. Pei Qingchen, if you want to survive in this city, never let me see your face again. I walked out of the club, the night wind catching my hair. I had won this battle beautifully, but I knew it wasn't over. As long as Pei Qingchen had a breath left in him, his resentment would burn. But so what, he didn't even have the right to beg for mercy at my feet anymore. Next, it was time to send him exactly where he belonged. The rain in Shenzhen always comes without warning, cold and biting. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows on the top floor of Universe Capital, overlooking the city. The lights were dazzling, the rain was a veil, and my gaze was fixed on the dark shadow curled up in the rain by the front entrance below. It was Pei Qingchen. It has been 3 days since Nailan Yang's arrest. During those 3 days, Pei Qingchen was like a ghost haunting the city, overgrown with stubble. His once priceless suit was now soaked through, clinging to him like a layer of decaying skin. President Su, should I have someone remove him? Cheng Yang asked respectfully, standing behind me. No need. I set down my coffee, my voice calm. Let him kneel there. He's not kneeling for me, he's kneeling for that ridiculous pride of his. By the time I headed downstairs, it was already 11 at night. As I stepped through the revolving glass doors, the icy rain lashed against my face instantly. Yet it wasn't nearly as cold as the scene before me. Pei Qingchen was kneeling at the base of the steps, his knees turning pale from being soaked in the puddles. That spine, which used to be so straight and arrogant, was now bent into a lowly arch. Hearing footsteps, he snapped his head up. Those eyes, once sinister and indifferent, were now bloodshot and murky. Seeing me appear, he looked as if he had caught his final lifeline. He struggled to stand, but his legs were so numb that he collapsed heavily back into the muddy water, sending a splash flying. Qinghuan. His voice was hoarse, sounding like it had been dragged over sandpaper. I know I was wrong, I truly know it now. I held my umbrella and stood 3 meters away, looking down at him. The CEO who once ruled the business world now lived like a stray dog. And what exactly were you wrong about? I asked. Pei Qingchen's body trembled violently. He didn't even bother wiping the rain from his face as he choked out. I was wrong. I shouldn't have listened to that woman's lies. I shouldn't have treated you that way. You were so good to me. You spent 6 years paving the way for me. I didn't even realize that you were the reason the Pei family gained a foothold. He wept miserably, tears mingling with the rain. 6 years ago, seeing him like this might have softened my heart. I might have given everything to help him through his crisis, but now looking at him I only found it utterly absurd. Pei Qingchen, you're wrong. I held the umbrella so that its frame blocked the faint overhead light, casting his face into shadow. You aren't regretting this because you love me, you're feeling sorry for yourself because you lost everything you wanted. He looked up sharply, a flicker of panic in his eyes. No, Qinghuan, I've thought about it so much lately. Without you, I realized no one in this world is truly good to me, no one helps me so selflessly. I want to go back to the way things were. Can we start over? Start over? I almost laughed out loud. Your remorse is worth less than trash to me now. I stepped closer, using the tip of my umbrella to tilt his chin up, forcing him to meet my eyes. When you pushed me down those long stairs back then, what were you thinking? You were thinking about Nailan Yang's non-existent child. You were wondering if I would die. In that moment you killed me, Pei Qingchen. He was speechless, his pupils trembling. Your pain now is because you lost your title as the CEO of the Pei Group. You lost that sense of superiority where you could look down on everyone. I tossed the umbrella aside, letting the rain soak me, yet I remained standing tall. You don't love me at all. You only love the Su Qinghuan who sacrificed for you, planned for you, and let you trample all over her while she stayed by your side. Pei Qingchen stared at me, his lips quivering, unable to utter a single word. He knew I had hit the mark. Go back. I turned my back on him. The law will tell you where you need to go to atone. It won't be with me, it will be in a prison cell. Su Qinghuan, he suddenly shrieked, a final struggle. Are you really this heartless, even after our 6 years of marriage, our marriage? I stopped and looked back at him through the freezing rain, my gaze devoid of warmth. Those 6 years of sentiment were crushed into ash the moment you slapped me. I strode into the elevator, ignoring his pleas and roars. Behind me, as the elevator doors slowly closed, I saw him through the gap, collapsing in the heavy rain and clawing at the floor tiles. He looked exactly as desperate as I felt the night I fell from that building. Inside the elevator, Cheng Yang handed me a dry towel and said softly, "President Su, he is completely broken. It's not his career that's broken, it's his humanity." I wiped the rain from my face, watching the slumped figure on the security monitor. This is the best punishment for him. Let him live and watch as I systematically restructure the pay group. Let him watch me reach the heights he can never touch again. I didn't need his apology, nor did I need his repentance. I just needed him to stay alive, carrying this deep regret and despair until he grew old, until his life finally ended. The rain poured harder, the city remained bustling, but the era of Pei Qingchen had officially come to an end. In the suburbs of Shenzhen there was an abandoned textile warehouse. The rusted iron doors creaked in the wind, and the air was thick with the smell of rotting dampness. I had originally intended this place to store the low-quality inventory liquidated after the Pei Group's bankruptcy. I never expected it to become the stage for Neilan Yang's final fatal blow before the police could take her away. She hadn't gone to jail yet. She had hired thugs to shake off the police on the way to the station. Funded by the real estate developers I had ousted, I was thrown inside with my hands tied. The rough hemp rope chafed my wrists painfully. Neilan Yang sat on a broken chair in the center of the warehouse, playing with a folding knife. Her once exquisite face was now twisted into a hideous mask of madness. Her makeup was half smudged. She looked like an escort from hell. "Su Qinghuan, weren't you so high and mighty? Aren't you the heir to global capital?" She stood up abruptly, the tip of the blade grazing my cheek and leaving a thin trail of blood. "I have nothing now. Pei Qingchen disowned me. The Pei Group is gone and my reputation is ruined. You did this to me." I looked at her coldly, neither struggling nor begging. That silence only made Neilan Yang more volatile. "Don't look at me with those eyes." She backhanded me. A stinging pain flared up and I tasted blood. "You think you've won?" I slowly raised my head, my gaze even colder than hers. "Neilan Yang, people like you belong in the gutter. Even if you kidnap me, you will never climb back out." "Shut up," Neilan Yang screamed. She signaled to the two thugs behind her. "Drag her to that pit. Since she loves being above everyone else, let's see how she likes it down there." The pit was a deep foundation hole filled with rebar and concrete debris. Falling in meant death or permanent disability. I was shoved toward the edge, my heels screeching against the dusty floor. The two thugs clearly hesitated. They knew who I was. Touching someone from global capital was a death sentence in this city. "What, are you scared?" Neilan Yang brandished her knife. "She's just a stray dog now. If you do it, I'll give you $1 million each." For these desperate men, $1 million was enough to risk everything. They traded glances, no longer hesitating, and grabbed my arms to drag me toward the edge. The moment my body hung in the air, Neilan Yang erupted into a piercing laugh. "Su Qinghuan, you're finally going to die. Once you're dead, this all ends." Just as the thugs were about to let go, I curled my body inward, slamming my knee hard into the right thug's abdomen. Simultaneously, I used the momentum to shove the man holding my left wrist. The rope had been heavily frayed. During the struggle it had already loosened. I had used a shard from a fountain pen in my bag earlier to weaken the fibers at the connection point. The moment I broke free, I didn't retreat. Instead, I grabbed a piece of broken rebar nearby. Arg! As the man doubled over in pain, I swung the steel bar with frantic speed, striking him across the back of the head. He cried out and slumped to the ground. The other thug was stunned by my ruthlessness and hesitated to move forward. "Get her, kill her," Neilan Yang shrieked from the side, her voice cracking. I looked at Neilan Yang, my eyes devoid of any warmth. I dropped the rebar and walked toward her step by step, terrified. She scrambled backward until she hit the floor. What do you want?" She held up the folding knife with trembling hands. I grabbed her wrist and twisted hard. The knife clattered to the floor. I didn't scream like she did. Instead, I was frighteningly calm. "This is your counterattack." I kicked the knife away, grabbed her hair and slammed her face into the dust. "Neilan Yang, you underestimated me. For the past 6 years I wasn't just Mrs. Pei, I was the head of global capital. The risks and challenges I've faced are far more brutal than anything you can imagine. Su Qinghuan, you'll burn in hell. You should worry about yourself first." Outside the warehouse, the frantic sound of sirens approached. Before I was kidnapped, my smartwatch, which always had its GPS enabled, had already sent a distress signal to Cheng Yang. Neilan Yang's face turned ashen as the police stormed in. I saw a familiar figure at the entrance, Pei Qingchen. He stood in the shadows watching the scene, watching Neilan Yang being pinned to the ground by officers. and watching me stand up elegantly from the edge of the pit, smoothing my messy hair. He didn't walk over, nor did he try to help, he just watched, the last spark of hope in his eyes finally dying out. He had thought Nalan Yang was his true love, no matter how crazy or vicious she was now. Reality had dealt him the final blow. The police took Nalan Yang and the thugs away. I stood at the warehouse doors watching the flashing lights, then turned to meet Pei Qingchen's gaze. He looked even older now. His soaked suit had dried but was wrinkled beyond recognition. Qinghuan, he opened his mouth, his voice so weak it was barely audible. Was it I who destroyed you? I looked at him and answered coldly, it was your greed that destroyed everyone. I walked straight past him. Without sparing him a single glance, the courtroom of the Shenzhen Intermediate People's Court was heavy with a suffocating solemnity. The gallery was packed to capacity, with media cameras already trained on the defendant's dock. Pei Qingchen, who once stood at the pinnacle of the city's elite, now huddled in the shadows of the dock, clad in a yellowed prison uniform and shackled at the wrists. His hair was a matted mess and his once shrewd eyes were now nothing but cold ash. The crack of the gavel echoed through the room as the presiding judge spoke with gravity. The court will now deliver the final verdict in the cases of embezzlement, commercial fraud, and violent assault against Pei Qingchen, Nalan Yang and their accomplices. I sat in the witness stand as the lead witness and the representative of Universal Capital. Eschewing my aggressive black power suits, I chose a cream-colored cashmere set, a look of calm, composed elegance that stood in stark contrast to the wretched man across from me. The chain of evidence was devastatingly complete, from every bank statement showing Pei using Universal's public funds to cover his own corporate deficits, to the contracts where he hired third-party firms to forge project metrics, and the shell games he played with assets to hide his debts. Every figure was a nail in his coffin. The prosecutor's voice was firm and resonant. The defendant, Pei Qingchen, exploited his marital relationship to illegally occupy the property of others over a long period, involving an exceptionally large sum. Furthermore, with full knowledge, he instigated defendant Nalan Yang to file fraudulent medical claims and threatened the life of the victim. In accordance with the penal code, Pei Qingchen is hereby sentenced to 15 years in prison, with the forfeiture of all personal assets. 15 years. A ripple of commotion swept through the courtroom. Pei Qingchen's body jolted. He looked up, staring at me through the thick security glass. There was no remorse in that gaze. No anger, only a complex, almost twisted sense of daze. He seemed to be asking me, why? How could the woman who used to report to me just to go grocery shopping be the one to personally send me to prison? Why did the empire he built over 6 years collapse instantly in my hands? I simply looked back at him, my gaze as steady as if I were looking at a complete stranger. After the sentencing, before the bailiffs led him away, I requested one final meeting with the defendant. We faced each other across the glass in a desolate interrogation room. He looked 10 years older, his once youthful and handsome face now etched with deep lines of ruin. Is this the result you wanted? Pei Qingchen spoke, his voice rasping like sandpaper. You won, Su Qinghuan. You didn't just ruin me, you ensured I'll rot in here for the rest of my life. This is merely a just reckoning for your actions, Pei. I replied coldly. If you had shown even a shred of respect, a modicum of loyalty to our marriage, we never would have come to this. Loyalty. He let out a bleak, short laugh. Do you really think I ever viewed you as a wife in your eyes? I was always just the young master of the Pei family who needed your support. You were always high and wide, looking down on me like a child. Did you think I didn't notice? Looking at him, I felt a flicker of genuine pity. You're wrong, I said softly. I never looked down on you. I viewed you as the only person in this world I could rely on. For you, I mobilized every resource I had. I nearly gave up my inheritance at Universal Capital just for your sake. Pei froze. It seemed he was realizing for the very first time exactly what Su Qinghuan, the woman who had quietly fixed his messes for 6 years, had actually sacrificed. The biggest mistake of my life was choosing you. I stood up and picked up my handbag. From this day forward, our grievances end here. You will spend the best 15 years of your life in prison while I take my life to places you can no longer reach. Wait, he suddenly called out. In that moment he seemed to recall a detail he had completely buried. Qinghuan, that car accident years ago, it wasn't an accident, was it? I paused, my back to him, a cold smile playing on my lips. Only remembering now, Pei Qingchen, the lives you owe me amount to far more than just that one. I strode out of the room, the piercing sunlight spilled over me as I walked through the courthouse corridor. I looked back one last time at the heavy iron doors. The man who had occupied 6 years of my youth was now officially excised from my life. I pulled out my phone and dialed Cheng Yang. President Su, the result: he's been sentenced. The restructuring plan for the pay group can now enter its final phase. I looked up at the blue sky and took a deep breath. By the way, there's no need for him to ever know the truth about who really saved his life back then. Let him spend the next 15 years living with his questions and his regret. It was my final act of mercy and my deepest punishment. This battle of mine was finally a total victory. And I was ready for the next dawn. 3 days after the sentencing, I arrived at the landmark building that once symbolized the power of the pay group. The security at the door had already been replaced by Universal Capital staff. My heels clicked sharply against the marble floors, echoing through the vast lobby. The pay group was now a hollow shell, with Pei Qingchen imprisoned and Neilan Yang caught. Every faction that once clung to the Pei family had either cut ties or declared bankruptcy upon seeing the evidence of fraud. I took the private elevator straight to Pei's former executive office. Everything was as it had been: the expensive rosewood desk, the wall of honors detailing the company's history, even his favorite fountain pen sat in its usual spot. But now it all belonged to me, President Su. The asset liquidation is complete. The head of the audit team approached and handed me a thick report. All properties, vehicles, and securities in Pei Qingchen's name, including the offshore companies he set up in secret, have been seized. The banks are processing the final auctions. This building will be listed for sale tomorrow. I nodded, took the report and fed it into the shredder. Clean it up even more, I said, sitting in his old chair and turning it toward the massive floor-to-ceiling windows. Aside from the essential assets we're keeping, destroy everything else. Just then there was a knock at the door. A disheveled, defeated-looking man walked in. He was once Pei's most trusted assistant, the accomplice who helped him cook the books. He looked years older now and didn't even dare to meet my eyes. President Su, these are the last of Mr. Pei's personal belongings. He placed a battered cardboard box on the corner of the desk, his voice trembling. He insisted that if things ever went south, that I should return these to him. Is that it? I interrupted with a cold sneer. There was nothing of value in the box: a few outdated business magazines, an old lighter, and a crisply ironed white shirt. That was the first designer shirt I had saved up to buy him when he first started his business. He had cherished it back then, saying that no matter how successful he became, he would keep it to remind himself of where he started. Looking at it now, it was just pathetic. Take it away. I didn't even want to touch it. Trash built on lies has no place here. President Su, are you really going to be this ruthless? The assistant finally looked up. Mr. Pei is having a very hard time in prison. He hopes to see you one last time, even if just to repent. I stood up and walked over to him, my gaze as sharp as a blade. When he was repenting, did he think about my dignity which he trampled on for 6 years? Did he think about how pushing me down those stairs could have actually killed me? Tell him to stop performing this nauseating display of deep affection for me. The assistant turned pale, bowed his head and scurried out. I picked up the desk phone and dialed security. Dispose of the trash on the desk, then have the Pay Group logo removed from the building entirely. Half an hour later, I stood by the window and watched as workers used heavy machinery to pry the massive Pay Group sign from the exterior wall. The golden letters swung in mid-air before crashing to the ground with a dull, heavy thud. At that moment I felt the weight that had pressed on my heart for 6 years finally shatter into dust. I sent a message to Universal Capital's headquarters: liquidation complete, the Pay Group is officially history. As I left the building, a light mist was falling. I walked across the empty plaza, once a bustling hub, now silent save for the wind. Pei Qingchen's so-called empire had once ruled this city. Now it had vanished without a whisper. I stepped into the waiting car and told the driver, back to Universal headquarters. My journey of reclamation was now a perfect success. Every insult, betrayal, and humiliation had become a stepping stone to the summit. I had finally completed my transformation from a long-suffering wife to the Queen of Capital. But every story needs an ending. I wondered if Pei Qingchen, sitting in his cold cell and facing those stained walls, would think of me. Would he think of that white shirt, the one he thought represented his dream, and realize exactly what he had thrown away? In the end, it didn't matter, because starting tomorrow I would open a brand new chapter with Universal Capital. As for Pei Qingchen, he can spend the next 15 years slowly chewing on his own regret. The spring breeze in Shenzhen carried the scent of new buds. I stood on the top floor of the Universal Capital building, in a private lounge I had redesigned with panoramic glass walls. From 200 meters up, the shadows that once suffocated me, the Pei family estate, the Pei office, even those stairs I fell from, were now nothing but blurred specks on the horizon. President Su, here is the new strategic plan. Cheng Yang placed a file softly before me. I didn't open it. Immediately, I simply traced the edge of the desk. The surface was clean, no more of Pei's self-important secrets, only a blueprint for Universal Capital's global expansion. The progress is excellent. I looked at the clouds drifting past the window, a month ahead of schedule. Everyone is saying the city's business climate feels much cleaner now that Pei is behind bars. Cheng Yang added quietly. I smiled, a sense of relief washing over me that felt almost foreign. Just then a knock came at the door. It was Pei Qingchen's distant cousin. He had been a mid-level manager at the Pei Group but had vanished after the collapse. He looked destitute. In his hand he held a weathered prison visitation form. President Su, I just came from the prison, he stammered, placing the form on the desk. He's losing his mind in there. He says he must see you one last time. He says there's something vital, something about the car accident, that he has to give you personally. I wanted to refuse. I had nothing left to say to him, but for some reason in that split second I nodded. Tell him to write it down and have it delivered, I said flatly. And tell him this is the last time. Even if he rots in that cell, he is never to mention seeing me again. The man looked as if he had been granted a divine pardon and scrambled out of the office. 5 days later, I received a letter. The envelope was yellowed, the edges of the paper frayed. It was written in Pei's own hand, a wild, frantic scrawl that looked like the struggle of a man on the brink of a breakdown. I opened it slowly. There was no apology, no begging. Inside was only a photocopy of a memo he had kept in the Pei Group safe years ago. It was from 6 years ago, when he first started his business and was desperate for an angel investor. The contract I had funneled through Universal while hiding my identity. In the corner, he had drawn a circle in red ink. Inside it he had written my name, Su Qinghuan. Below it was a single line. If I can take everything she has, the world will be mine. If she ever becomes a burden, I must destroy her completely. I looked at that line, and my heart remained unnervingly calm. So, from the very moment he decided to marry me, he never saw me. He saw the capital behind me, and a possession he wanted to control and destroy out of his own deep-seated insecurity. I fed the letter into the shredder. President Su, the press conference starts in 1 hour, Cheng Yang said, entering the room. The media is all here. The world wants to know where Universal Capital is headed next. I straightened my lapel. It was a custom-tailored suit I had picked out myself, sharp, elegant and commanding. Let's go. I walked out of the office and into the elevator. As we descended, I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. That face was no longer the face of the humble, timid woman from 6 years ago. In her place was a woman who had survived the harshest winter and emerged with the iron-willed grace of someone who truly owns her destiny. At the conference, the camera flashes came like a tidal wave. I stood at the podium, facing hundreds of reporters and shareholders. My voice was steady and powerful. Universal Capital's goal for the future is not just expansion, it is transformation. Out of the corner of my eye, I glanced at the VIP section. There was one empty seat. The man who used to stand there, masquerading as a husband while trying to dictate my life, was now trapped in a dark corner, swallowing the bitter fruit of his own making. He once tried to destroy me. He wanted the name Su Qinghuan to vanish from this city. He was wrong. From the moment I fell from those stairs, I was no longer the Su Qinghuan he knew. Our marriage was a high-stakes gamble. He lost everything, and I won back my life. After the conference, I walked out of the building alone and strolled through the bustling pedestrian streets. Familiar music drifted from a corner cafe and sunlight filtered through the branches onto my palm. I took a deep breath of the air. It smelled like freedom. I don't owe you my life, Pei Qingchen. You only deserve to rot slowly in that cold corner, and I, Su Qinghuan, will walk toward the brightest sun my life has ever known. The end.